with more power, better sound, and improved torque. What isn't there to love about two-strokes? I know that there's a whole community of people out there that will absolutely die for two-strokes, and they think that they're clearly superior than a four-stroke. However, in the past, especially recently, I think we've kind of been disproven with this, as it kind of feels like two-strokes are becoming dead for some reason. First of all, let's have a look how two-stroke engines actually work. There are 4 stages of an engine: intake, compression, power, and exhaust. And this cycle is completed within 2 rotations of the cylinder in the 4-stroke engines. However, in a 2-stroke engine, all these 4 cycles are completed in only 1 rotation. A 2-stroke engine controls intake and exhaust gases by intake and exhaust ports along the cylinder wall, producing in an organic exchange of pressures and vacuums without the use of valves or even an accelerator pump. So 2-strokes have fewer parts, making them slightly cheaper and easier to maintain. So because the combustion cycle can happen in almost half the time, this means that a 2-stroke can accelerate faster as more power and torque is delivered quicker. And these properties allow a 2-stroke engine of the same displacement to produce around 30% more power than its 4-stroke counterpart. So from all this sounds pretty great. I mean, they're cheaper, easier to maintain, but you get more power, better torque, and also the sound is great. But why were they killed? Well, the main reason really is pollution. For example, Euro 5 emissions that sometimes can be a bit strict, and I'm not sure on this, but some brands like Honda or Suzuki have kind of stopped producing 600cc motorbikes for a bit. This is like in the supersport world. But then some brands like Kawasaki, if they bring in a new 600, then it drives the competition, and other brands also make 600s. But I think this is also the reason why Yamaha stopped making the R6. I'm not sure, I don't really know about this, but I believe that it's because the emissions were a bit too strict, which is kind of a problem. I mean, of course, for us, as riding, we just want the best performance, that are cheapest, the easiest to maintain. So we don't really care about emissions, but on the global scale, you can kind of see why it is a bit of an issue. But 2-strokes rely on oil for lubrication. Therefore, if oil is in the cylinder itself, then it will lead to oil burning, which is why you can see white smoke coming out the exhaust of a 2-stroke, because it is the oil that's been burnt. Furthermore, the unburnt gasoline and oil combination is extremely dangerous to the environment, so you can kind of see why they've not really produced anymore, at least in the road bikes, road cars. Off-road, KTM, Husqvarna, whatever, we still have 2-strokes, because in general these bikes are lower displacement, not burning as much, therefore they're not as dangerous to the environment, but also a lot of them aren't legal, so they can kind of slip past some of these rules. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was a lot more economically viable for companies to invest more into 4-stroke engines instead of almost wasting their time and money on researching 2-strokes in order to achieve the same objective. And then by around the mid-1990s, pretty much all 2-strokes that you'll see on the road are gone. And now, in the 21st century, in the off-road world, a manufacturer by the name of KTM has pretty much kept the competition and drove it for companies such as Beta or GasGas, Husqvarna, TM, Sherco to carry on producing 2-strokes, compared to some other brands like Honda or Suzuki that have pretty much completely stopped making 2-stroke off-road dirt bikes. But the problem here is that if every single dirt bike manufacturer, so if we have Yamaha, KTM, GasGas, all of these, if they basically did what Honda is doing now and just pretty much abolish 2-strokes and only make 4-strokes, the 2-strokes would be completely dead. They'll be nowhere. I mean, what? You'd have some old vintage bike, but there'll be no new releases of 2-strokes. They'll be completely dead. And I mean, there are some performance gains that it can be made with 2-strokes. It's not that they're completely useless. However, at a pro level, there's not that big. Well, it depends, I suppose. I was going to say it's not that big of a deal, but From what I know, some riders, they kind of prefer four strokes in general for racing. I'm not exactly sure why. I'd imagine they're just more predictable. I mean, they're slightly heavier, which could potentially be nice, or it depends what you're doing, I guess. But in general, like some riders like Billy Bolt, from what I know, he doesn't notice that big of a difference. It's like, for example, if he was to ride a 1252 stroke and a 254 stroke, or whatever, then his lap time would be very similar. It would not be that big of a difference. But overall, he just prefers the four stroke. I don't know why. Again, I'm not some sort of like mechanical whatever, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a random guy on YouTube that basically knows like a thing or two about motorbikes. And in the very recent years, we've seen very nice improvements in SUV strokes. For example, EFI, electronic fuel injection, which is a huge benefit. You get a lot more accurate mixtures. And I mean, it's just something that people want. When someone's buying a bike for 10 grand, then you kind of want these electronics. But overall, my prediction is that in the future, we're probably going to see less of two strokes. Maybe like in a few decades, there pretty much just won't be any. That's the truth, which, I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly. But I just think it's the way that has to be. Especially with emissions. You know, I mean, Euro 5, like, it's quite strict a lot of the time. I mean, it's not even that. I mean, I think you understand the gist. Like, two strokes is not as environmentally friendly. I mean, yeah, they produce more power, but I mean, you can achieve the same thing with a high displacement engine. So, there's not a real reason to actually use a two stroke. I mean, yeah, sure, they're nice. But I think that one day, soon, well, it's going to be very soon, it's just going to be a thing of the past. But what do you think will happen to two strokes? And do you think that they'll soon become completely abandoned?